So let's venture back to when horror took on a terrifying transformation with the metamorphosis of the werewolf subgenre in Joe Dante's The Howling. Los Angeles newswoman Karen White has been dangerously ensnared into the twisted psyche of serial murderer Eddie Quist. Lured into a seedy adult store, Eddie terrifies her with a chilling encounter that leaves her with a memory blackout. As she tries to report on the incident, her trauma leaves her paralyzed with fear all over again, and soon consults with Dr. George Wagner, a therapist who aided her in preparing for meeting with Eddie. Wagner invites Karen to a remote retreat in the woods known as the Colony, where he can treat her and others for a supposed array of conditions. As Karen's colleagues Chris Holleran and Terry Fisher follow the trail of questions and mysteries regarding Quist, the unsettling wilderness around Karen and her husband Bill begins to creep in upon them, revealing a far more feral reality. It's soon discovered this entire colony has been populated with people trying to repress their lycanthrope urges. When Karen finally comes face to face with Eddie Quist, she witnesses his horrific transformation into a werewolf. Yet the nightmare for this pure of heart woman has only begun, as her traumatic journey takes on even more surprising revelations. So The Howling was released into cinemas on April 10th of 1981 from Avco MC Pictures, grossing over $17 million off of a mere $1.5 million budget, making it a fantastic success for them and director Joe Dante, who had come up in the Roger Corman School of Filmmaking, kind of editing trailers for him, doing stuff, and kind of moving himself up in the world, until he ended up doing films like Hollywood Boulevard and Piranha for him. And Joe Dante was actually all the way over on Universal Pictures developing a film called Jaws 3 People Zero, which would have been a fantastic parody satire film in the Jaws franchise that he kind of saw really wasn't getting up on the right tracks and felt like it was about to fall apart completely when he got contacted about doing this film, The Howling, which is being adapted from the novel from Gary Brandner. And it had been one of the things that the whole thing was being so closely adapted to the novel that some of the producers on the film just didn't feel like the script was really kind of hitting anything. It really wasn't kind of capturing something particularly special. It really wasn't clicking the place or something that felt like it just motivated them or whatnot. So getting Joe Dante in the whole thing and agreeing with the producers that the script really needed an overhaul, Joe Dante brought in his friend of Jan Sales, who had worked with on Piranha and a few other things before this, to kind of shake it up and kind of ultimately decide to mostly kind of throw the entire book away, aside from like a couple character names and a few little minor details here or there, but they kind of like just took the bare elements of it and kind of bred their own new story about the whole damn thing to expand it out to much more different things, having the main character being a news reporter, all that type of stuff, having all the stuff with the self-help movement, all this stuff with the colony up in Northern California, all these little extra added bits to kind of flesh out the ideas, give them something a little bit more to kind of play with in the story and everything. And so much what Joe Dante wanted to do with this film was really kind of update the werewolf mythology and get a much more modern type of film, have this whole lore kind of exist in a world that is familiar to us, that's very modern, very contemporary, and in a world that actually does acknowledge the existence of werewolves in fiction, all this type of stuff, and mythology and lore and whatnot, to kind of have a different spin on things. Instead of having the old Universal horror stuff or stuff that's a little bit more sort of like a period piece or whatnot, you have it in a contemporary setting that allows for a lot more fresher things to kind of evolve through the entire story in this whole thing and kind of comment on certain things that were happening at that point in time in society and culture and whatnot. They kind of just have a fresh new spin on it, to have something more energetic, and just having this type of thing where it just felt like a completely new and updated and just kind of refreshed type of style to it and everything. And Joe Dante is definitely a filmmaker who just embraces a lot of style here, and is very much of the edict that if you're going to shoot a film on color film, you should make use of the color. And he's so much towards this film absolutely puts that completely on the screen display to make it such a vibrant film to look at, with so many of the color gels that he uses for different sequences, where it's like early on in the adult bookstore, we got all these sort of sleazy reds going on or whatnot, or some things out on the streets of LA and everything, got the blues and the greens and whatnot. So it's like he's always trying to put a little bit of splash of color in there to make it just vibrant, make use of the color that you have at your disposal to give the film an atmosphere, give it a mood, give it something that's visually appealing and intriguing and aids towards the entire feeling of the movie as you go along in the narrative and everything. So he's so much that type of thing, and his cinematographer puts together one of the most beautiful looking horror films out there, with just all the, again, the color, the atmosphere you have with certain sort of smoky visuals and stuff like that out in the forest. You just get the fog rolling in, all this type of stuff, and just the use of all the different angles and stuff like that, using all this wonderful movement in the film to just give it such a flowing quality, and at certain points at time just has so much value on the screen for what he puts together here with his vision and the cinematography put together, that just adds so much into the overall feel and the overall quality of this entire film, that even in 1981, $1.5 million budget was maybe just a higher end of low budget, but it was still technically sort of low budget type of filmmaking. And Roger Corman was certainly a guy who knew how to stretch the budgets and get the maximum value out of every single dollar put into a production. So Dante definitely knew that sort of economical filmmaking to get that much value out of what he had to use, and he knew how to visualize the storytelling that he wanted to give in this whole film, to have such early on the sort of film noir sort of urban quality to the whole film, getting into the sort of almost serial killer thriller type of idea here, with all the great light and shadow and the sort of grimy streets of LA, all these little things, and the neon here and there and everywhere. So it's like they got that great feeling early on. Then you start transitioning more into the sort of rural setting and whatnot with the colony and everything, and you get all the beautiful stuff they do out in the forest, and just have all these different things at their disposal to just create a visually intriguing and engaging film here. It looks absolutely fantastic and wonderful to begin with, and just keeps building as it goes on to just create much more interesting use of suggestive visuals until you finally get to a climax that delivers on some fantastic type of stuff. And talking about the themes of the film here, that again, they had this whole sort of self-help type of movement going on that I think I kind of commented a little bit on when I did my review of the 1970 Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that there was kind of this neo-new wave movement of psychology going on and everything like that, and this is certainly a byproduct of that. It's like they wanted to add that in there as a sort of satirical element of the whole thing, that there's always a certain theme and whatnot, a certain subtext with werewolves and whatnot. There's certainly a sense of sort of repression of an animalistic side to yourself or whatnot, this sort of uninhibited sensibility about being buried within the civilized society of a human being and whatnot. And so they decided to wrap that up in this whole sort of the colony of werewolves who are being sort of given all its therapy to be able to kind of exist and coexist and sort of meld into society and all these types of things to kind of control their urges. So it's such an interesting little concept there to kind of weave the sort of subtext around and everything into a more of a modern setting that is certainly a little sort of dated at this point in time, but it just has a certain quality to it that's very sort of Joe Dante-esque. It always has this sort of wit and whimsical sort of twist on things here and there. They really just nailed such a great thing with that element of the story here, to kind of weave that around and have that addressed by the end of the film here, where you have the entire colony just kind of turns against that. It's like they're finally now embracing that sensibility about themselves, because they're kind of tired of it all. They're kind of tired of this sort of way of repressing what they are and all this type of stuff, and just want to be just uninhibited in what they do and everything. So it's kind of an interesting type of way how that flows through and deals with the entire thing. And you get the sense that even the character of Eddie Quist, portrayed by Robert Picardo, is kind of a little bit not of that type of thing. That, yeah, he's spent time in the colony and whatnot, but you definitely see like he's gone back to the city, and he's kind of a twisted personality. He's kind of a serial killer in towards his mentality and psychology and whatnot. But the fact that he's a werewolf, and there's a great, again, another little twist on the entire idea there, the kind of expectation going up on it. It is wonderful type of things that you see that Quist is probably like this guy who probably doesn't entirely really subscribe to that whole type of thing that they're doing up here, but it has a little bit of a tether because you got the sister and the other brother there and everything. So
all these interesting little things they add into the whole complexity of the entire makeup, the movie. Just like it is really type of good stuff here. This handles subtlety and wit, a whimsical type of execution overall. And Joe Dante was just so absolutely fortunate to get together a fantastic cast for this whole film. Starting with our lead character here, portrayed by Dee Wallace, who just has a fantastically bright personality on screen every time you see her. I just love the sort of sympathetic innocence that she kind of has in this film. Just a vulnerability, a sweetness about the character that, right from the beginning of the film, as you see her walking through the sleazy parts of LA, down to the adult bookstore, just like, this is not a place where she feels comfortable in any type of way. She's very much a character it's just very pure in a certain way. She doesn't have any of this sort of corruption of jaded society, all this sort of darker elements of society. She's definitely being pulled into a uncomfortable realm of the world and everything, even in her own city. And then even when she goes out in the colony, she's not very comfortable there either. She's very spooked out by different things and not being very settled into this sort of thing. So it's like she's always got this sort of thing of just not being at ease in any type of place in the entire course of the narrative here in the film. She's always got these wonderful sort of moments that you see the character after the encounter with Eddie Quist, where she has this fantastic performance, where she's just like moments where she's terrified, she wants to scream out, but the scream can't leave her mouth. It's just like, it's silence. The terror just grips her so tightly, it robs her of the scream that she wants to so desperately project out into the world at that moment. So it's like, it's a wonderful sort of moment there that I don't think gets utilized in horror films nearly enough. Too many are too focused on just getting the visceral scream. This is a fantastic little piece of a performance here, and it's how that threads through the rest of the film, having that traumatic experience be the entire crux of what this character is dealing with throughout the entire course of the movie, trying to grapple with this sort of blackout memory that she has about the entire experience. Just, it's so traumatic towards her that she has to go up to the colony and try to work this out with hypnosis or other types of therapy, try to figure things out. Obviously, we can see later on that there's an ulterior motive for them wanting her to be up in the colony and everything, but regardless of that, it's like a wonderful performance that she puts together. I just love everything she does in this whole thing, just right from the beginning to the very end of the film. She has such a warm, relatable, likable quality about her. Even what she does at the end of the film is such an amazing type of thing that just, it's sort of a selfless act in a certain way. So you see that quality kind of go through the entire film with this character, that she's very much not someone selfish, but she definitely deals with things in a very interesting type of fashion here, and has a wonderful chemistry with everyone she works with in this film. I'll say, because unbeknownst to when they auditioned him into the film, Christopher Stone and Dee Wallace were engaged to be married at the time, and they were a little bit put off once they found out about the relationship, but they definitely promised them that they would not be ganging up on people on set or whatnot or stuff like that. So it worked out fantastic, because obviously they work so well together. They have such a great chemistry. They work off very naturally and have a very sort of uninhibited quality about certain moments in the film, dealing with their characters and certain things that build up with the character Christopher Stone plays in the whole thing, or the actual husband of Dee Wallace's, Karen White here, that as he goes along in the film, he gets infected, he gets bitten, and he gets pulled in this whole animalistic sort of pull towards the night, all this type of stuff, the animalistic side of himself, and gets involved with the Marcia Quist and everything. So this entire thing starts to make him a little bit more uneasy, a little more volatile. So they have these moments where there is that conflict and that friction, all this type of stuff. So as two people who in real life were engaged, being married, and very much in love, they did not allow that to kind of adversely affect what they were doing on screen. They still portrayed their characters extremely well, and their real life sort of attraction and connection helped to strengthen the entire relationship on screen there. So it is a wonderful type of thing, how they worked off each other to kind of just nail all these different elements of the entire characters to really kind of bring something a little bit more substantive to life between the two of them and everything. And it is a wonderful type of thing to see how these two work together. And they did work together a couple more times after this, but sadly Christopher Stone did pass away from a heart attack in 1995, but he put together a really solid performance here all the way through. And throughout the entire rest of the film, you got some really fabulous delights that you get with the rest of the cast here, starting with Patrick Macnee, who made a name for himself in the British television series The Avengers back in the 60s and whatnot. And man, the guy is just wonderful. He's such a wonderful, charismatic, charming personality that I loved watching interviews from what he was being interviewed for the Howling and whatnot, and he was absolutely fantastically enthusiastic about it. He absolutely loved the film. He was terrified by it. He sold it so extremely well and just so genuine about just being very appreciative and praiseworthy about the experience of the film. So watching him in the film, that elevates what I love about what he does in this whole thing. Just bring in, again, that charm or whatnot as this sort of therapeutic psychiatrist or whatnot in this whole thing, kind of bringing all that kind of warmth and charm, all this type of stuff towards the forefront of it, and kind of making that sort of the facade to kind of lure everything into this whole thing, and being the sort of, maybe not ringleader of sorts, not sinister or whatnot, but sort of the guy who's at the head of this entire colony of werewolves that are trying to reintegrate into society and trying to repress what they are and trying to live amongst the regular human beings and everything. So it's wonderful how that goes along. And I kind of like the moment at the end of the film, his final moment of the whole thing, where he actually kind of, when you got the character from Dennis Dugan, he's got the shotgun and everything with the silver bullets, and Macnee's character of Dr. Wagner here and everything, he kind of walks up to him just to be shot. He seems like he's kind of elated to kind of get it over with. That it just like, he kind of brings it upon himself intentionally. And it's kind of an interesting little beat there that everyone else has turned against him in the entire colony. So it's like, I'm probably going to get ripped apart by these people right now, or I might as well just get a shot of a silver bullet in the heart or something. So whatever it is, I just like that little beat of the character there. There's sort of a twist, a turn about the character there, that moment or whatnot. And Macnee just wonderful performance all the way through. I just absolutely loved what he did completely in the film. And like I said, Dennis Dugan and Belinda Balaski here, I really like their chemistry in this whole thing. They're kind of he's kind of like the producer or whatnot of the television station, and she's also part of that thing, Terry or whatnot. She's actually involved with him and everything. They're a pairing, and they got a really solid chemistry. I like their entire part of the whole film, because they're still in the city or whatnot, kind of investigating Eddie Quist and trying to figure out various little things to get kind of pulled along on the entire werewolf sort of track or whatnot, because they find all the little things in Quist's apartment there, where he's got all the drawings, the sketches and whatnot, all these little things about werewolves, kind of like an obsession or whatnot. So they kind of follow along that trail and find that Eddie Quist's body is missing from the morgue, and trying to find all those lore and everything. And they encounter the wonderful Dick Miller in that bookstore, who's like absolutely fantastic in this thing as well. I just like the energy of their entire thread of the entire film. Whenever you cut back to them in the city, kind of going through this investigation, just has a certain energy, a certain sort of urgency about the entire thing. There's a lot of momentum in their story, and I liked their chemistry very well. I liked what they were doing in the whole film. They had a little bit of levity, a little bit of sort of charm and whatnot. So it's like there's a little something going on, and I like when you get up to the climax and he's racing back to the colony with the rifle and the silver bullets and everything like that. He kind of comes into kind of a badass type of mode or whatnot. And it's kind of interesting that Dennis Dugan ended up being a comedy director later on, doing a lot of Adam Sandler movies, but where it is in this film, he kind of comes off as a little bit of a badass in that entire final act or whatnot. He's really damn good. I really liked what he had to bring to this whole thing. Both of them really did a fantastic job in this whole thing as his pairing. And like I said, getting Dick Miller in this thing, which is like the absolute staple of a Joe Dante film up until obviously when Dick Miller passed a little bit in the last year or whatnot. Dick Miller was an absolute fucking treasure, man. And the fact that like Joe Dante, every single film that he did, he had to find a role to put Dick Miller into it, because he's kind of like his lucky charm or whatnot. And he was wonderful in this whole thing, just hitting it as signature Dick Miller type of stuff, just like charismatic, snappy, forceful, kind of salt of the earth type of character here in this bookstore with all this snappy dialogue. I just like the quality of that, what he brings to it all and everything. This guy who's kind of digging up all the werewolf lore and everything for these guys, but when they're asking him, like, do you really believe in this? I was like, no, I'm here to make a buck. That's a wonderful type of thing that, as in the whole sort of modernization of the werewolf sort of stuff in the whole film, that instead of going off to see some sort of old professor or some kind of mystic or some kind of shaman to find out the information about the werewolf, you go to a fucking bookstore. Go to a fucking bookstore. Some guy's got 10,000 books in that thing. He's got books aplenty about old werewolf lore and whatnot, but ask me if he believes in it. It's just like, no, I've got books to sell. I'm trying to earn a living here. So it's a great modern way of addressing that type of quality in the film, that the guy knows this stuff, but it's like, he thinks it's just kind of malarkey or whatnot. So it's like, it's wonderful. Just, again, this nice little a wit to it all. A nice little thing there that feels fresh and new and everything. That I'm sure a lot of other films after this kind of took it and twisted in their own ways. They have a new modern twist or whatnot, but like, having at this point in time where you just kind of gotten all the Hammer films and the Universal horror stuff, which is all very old and gothic and whatnot now. It's modern day, it's LA. Some guy in a bookstore has got a bunch of stuff that he knows about, but what the hell does it matter to him? Just wonderful. I just love Dick Miller, and this apparently was, at least at the time he was doing the interviews on the documentary for the old special edition DVD, was his favorite role that he ever done up to that point. So the fact that he did like half a day's work and it turned out like one of his favorite performances of all time is a testament to the quality of him, the quality of the writing, quality of Joe Dante. Wonderful stuff there. And Robert Picardo, man. A guy who doesn't have a lot of scenes in the film, but absolutely fucking steals it. He's fantastic as Eddie Quist. He's got such a chilling, creepy quality. Apparently, even from his audition, he did the whole thing of that first scene in the film where he's right behind Karen, doesn't allow her to turn around and see him and whatnot, and just like that chilling voice that he has, just giving all this stuff like, I'm going to light your body on fire, and all this type of stuff, just like, it creeped people out, and it creeps out in the film, just like, it has such a magneticism about what he's doing in the whole film. It's such a compelling, captivating character on screen. Just, he's got like 3 scenes in the whole goddamn movie, but man, they're fucking great. When I first saw this, like, I'd already just known Robert Picardo from like Star Trek Voyager, but he never got to do this sort of thing on Voyager. He got to do this in The Howling. And it's one of those things, like, it was his first, like, Hollywood feature, and it's like, he had a little bit of a crisis of confidence and whatnot. Like, it's my first Hollywood feature. I'm stuck under all this fucking gore makeup and all this type of stuff. I've got sort of condoms, not unused condoms, stuck on my face for air bladders. Like, he had a little bit of something, but he looks back on the film with a wonderful heart about the whole thing. Just absolutely loved it. He loved doing the character, loved the entire production. He's worked so much with Joe Dante after this. It's just a wonderful type of thing. Just like, I loved what he brought to this whole thing. Like, charisma that you just cannot deny in this whole film. Just, he's so just locked into the entire thing with the film once he's got all the makeup on him. He's, especially at the last scene he's got, where he's got the acid burns and he's kind of all mingled up and everything. He's got this wonderful feeling about the whole thing. Just like, you just want more of the character. You want him in more of the film. He just kind of just draws you in so much to just make him such a wonderful type of interesting, twisted type of character that just has his own sort of thing going on aside from the colony, aside from other things in the movie. Just like, it's a wonderful sort of character to just kind of lock the entire nucleus of the entire film around. And just so much of the cast overall just absolutely fantastically put together. Again, you got little pieces from like Kevin McCarthy, Slim Pickens, Noble Willingham, just wonderful, solid character actors throughout the entire film to just strengthen the core of the entire movie and just like make such distinct characters, such rich tapestry to kind of weave the entire story of this entire film around. Wonderful stuff in every type of way for every single casting here. Just nailed it, and they had such a fun time working together. And also wonderful type of thing, this whole thing, that originally was going to be Rick Baker doing the creature effects in this film, and he started out doing it, but got pulled away by John Landis to do American Werewolf in London, where they had been kind of talking about doing that film for like 10 years, but Landis took a long time to kind of build up his career, to kind of get people involved, to kind of fund the movie and everything. And once he had gotten that up there, Baker was already working on The Howling, kind of developing the stuff for that film. But obviously they kind of kept to their pact, and he moved on, and the guy who stepped up to do the rest of the effects in The Howling was Rob Bottin, who people would absolutely positively know from John Carpenter's The Thing, RoboCop, Total Recall. Just amazing type of films all over the place. I think he also worked on Inner Space for Dante as well. The guy put together a powerhouse career from this point onwards, and he just started out on the most fantastic note you could possibly do here, because the creature werewolf effects of this movie are out of this goddamn world. They had never been this good ever before this point in time, because before it had always been kind of like doing like dissolves or whatnot. They're always kind of like little optical effects that kind of cheaply morph things from one shot to the next with a cross dissolve or something like that. They'd never really gotten the advantage of what they had at the time, what the technology had gotten with all the latex and all the mechanical stuff they could do, all these different things they could do with, again, like with air bladders to kind of stretch the skin out, all these different things to really kind of create an overall terrifying experience with these creatures. They nailed it like living hell because they're terrifying. I am just so impressed watching the quality of this stuff. I mean, even the smallest thing, like when the werewolf gets his arm chopped off, and you see the thing kind of like deflate and kind of morph back into a human hand or whatnot, just seeing that effect, even though it's like cut to that, cut away, cut back, whatnot, the quality of the effects and how it kind of deflates and reinflates and transforms itself is extremely impressive for 1981. Blows you right out of the frickin' screen at that point in time. It is everything else they did, where originally they didn't have a full werewolf suit put together. They had like a head and a couple hands and maybe some feet. But they started putting the film together and realized this wasn't working like this. Even the one time they did have a full suit, kind of looked like a giant grizzly bear or whatnot. They didn't want to use it. They kind of used it a little bit in the scene where Terry gets attacked in Quist's cabin or whatnot. And they try to cut around it as much as possible. But if they cut the film together and saw like it really wasn't working, went back to Avco MC for a couple another $1,000 or what it was to do proper effects for this whole thing, and got the proper stuff put together. And again, Bottin just blows it out of the fucking water, man, because I mean, the Eddie Quist transformation sequence is just absolutely frightening. Just seeing how it all just starts bubbling up, and using with the sound design and everything, the sound effects they have the bones cracking and the jaw elongating, all these different things, and the contact lenses. The entire presentation of not just the effects, but the quality of what Picardo put into the character up to that point to already make him terrifying before he even changes. And then when he does change, it's just the thing on top of the cake, the icing on the cake there, to just make it a fantastic experience with this whole thing of just showing the big anthropomorphic 7-foot tall werewolf there. It just, you'd be terrified out of your mind. The thing is just absolutely fantastically done. And just, I love how the fact that this is even taking place in daylight and they shoot it and light it in such a way to make it still terrifying, still have an atmosphere about it. And the fact that they kind of changed some of the rules there, whatnot, where they didn't have like, it would require a full moon to change. Pretty much in this film, the rules are that a werewolf, whoever's become a werewolf, can change at will whenever they want to. So that's a nice little thing there to have that work for the story. You set your rules up early on and kind of move forward on that type of level there to make it work for the story you want to tell. And there's so much of the whole thing that I like. I just love the effects in this whole thing. There's all this type of stuff and how they kind of were able to kind of fake everything out, even in the climax there, where they only had like, again, one full suit and a head and a couple hands to make it seem like this whole car is being attacked by like half a dozen different werewolves. It's intelligent direction, intelligent cinematography, intelligent editing like hell, done by Mark Goldblatt, who had come up with Roger Corman and editing films like Terminator, Commando, First Blood Part 2, Terminator 2, Predator 2, Tombstone. Just a wealth of fantastically edited action pictures over the next several years. One of the best editors in the entire field, working on this film early on. He did such a fantastic thing to kind of salvage a lot of different things, to kind of alter the picture in certain places where some places he'd actually had to like blow up the frame to kind of cut things off that didn't quite work as the composition originally had it, to kind of edit the film together in a much more of a tighter, leaner type of fashion that had a much more just central focus in a certain way in certain sequences. It's a fantastic edited film that is kind of a really slow burn type of movie that it really has this very gradual build-up for the first hour and whatnot. You're getting a lot of the slow build-up of all these different things. You got this cold open, going into the whole thing with Quist and everything, and then you have the entire thing of dealing with Karen White and dealing with her trauma and trying to work things out. And again, those little things, the werewolves slowly dulled into the whole film until it just explodes and just pays off an hour's worth of build for a fantastic last half an hour of this movie that just hits the ground running up to this fantastic climax in this film that It's just a fantastic type of thing, in my opinion, that you've got this entire thing, and this news reporter who's been dealing with this entire story of Eddie Quist, and everyone else kind of going off and investigating who he is, where he went, all this type of stuff about his entire background and everything, and moving into this entire colony of werewolves, all this type of stuff, whatnot, kind of delving deeper and deeper in this whole thing that generally no one would even believe is real. And so this one reporter who gets in the deep in this whole thing and gets bitten by her own husband and gets turned, goes on live TV and transforms into a werewolf on TV is a terrifying moment. It's a chilling moment in the whole film that Dante almost beautifully and brilliantly undercuts with a sense of apathy that you could cut out to the audience watching on TV, and most of these people don't even believe this is even real. It's such a thing that you could even have that translate a lot to things today, to have that sort of apathy about people not really kind of buying into it or really kind of caring or thinking anything is what they see on the TV is real. It's such a thing that still, I think, resonates to this point in time, that has, again, that Dante wit to it and everything, that you could have ended that whole thing right when Dugan's character there fires the rifle with the silver bullet to just kill her. You could have ended there on this high note of horror or whatnot, but he cuts out to the whole thing, to everyone watching, and some people not really believing him. Like one guy at the bar thinks that was real, but everyone else kind of just brushes it off as nothing at all. And then you just have the character Marsha there at the end of the bar or whatnot. So it's like it still leaves all these little things in your head or whatnot to kind of swirl around and kind of be there in the entire just aura of the movie or whatnot. It's kind of a brilliant type of thing. Like anyone else would have just ended it right there on the beat of intense horror, but Dante just had that thing that he just likes to do or whatnot, that has that sort of further sort of reflection out about the entire events, that if you're showing this, you might think, okay, contained within this moment inside the television studio, it seems like it's a world-changing, earth-shattering moment. But you take it outside of that context, you have people watching it on TV, and you see the reaction, and you see it makes no effect on the world. It's this entire story, this entire thing, everything that she's gone through and now sacrificed and died for, basically doesn't mean anything. And it adds to a further tragic type of quality in certain things. It is a sorrowful, sad type of ending there to see her transform, knowing that she's sacrificing herself for the greater good, and it just doesn't have an effect on the world. It's sort of a interesting type of thing, that almost like reflecting on a jaded sensibility about society in a certain way. So it's such a smart film, and like I said, the makeup effects are just absolutely stellar. I just love how it's played. I love how it's all shot and put together and executed and acted. All these different things are all on the exact same high level of quality, except for that one scene where the character of Bill Neal meets up with Marcia Quist in the middle of the woods, and they have this sexual, lustful, feral encounter where they start transforming the werewolves in the middle of the whole thing. And at the end of the scene, there has this really cheap, bad sort of animated effect that kind of showed their final transformation in silhouette. Joe Dante never liked the effect. He always felt it was cheap. It never really worked right, but they really couldn't get anything else to kind of make the end of that scene function, so they're kind of left with that. But that can't overshadow all the other things in this movie. They had such amazing talent and such great things put into it, backed by a really damn good score here that really kind of brings together some really good moments. Everything's just at a wonderful, vibrant type of level that just screams Joe Dante to me. And anyone who has not experienced this movie, you're missing out on something wonderful and fantastic in werewolf cinema and horror cinema in general. So if you've not picked up that Scream Factory version, it's been out for a couple years. They got a steelbook out now. Like I said, some people really prefer American Werewolf in London. This one's a little bit more my flavor and whatnot. I love the look of it, the style of it, all this type of stuff. I like the terror, the horror of it. I just like the story being told here much more. It's much more to my taste, but still the other one is still a fantastic film. So guys, get your thoughts below, your comments, your feelings about this movie, and just the general feeling about Joe Dante's career in general. Like I said, Gremlins and Inner Space, The Burbs, Macnee, all these different things that he's done over the years. Throw it down below, because he's definitely one of the most underappreciated directors out there for genre fans and whatnot. So, and he also kind of co-runs the the website Trailers from Hell, where he kind of has filmmakers come in and do sort of a short commentary about films they love over the trailer itself. It's a really neat idea. So if you haven't checked out that channel or the website, I'll definitely have that link below in the description. So guys, The Howling, just tell me what you love about it, what your feelings are. Does it measure up as much as you think it does, as I think it does? Because I think it's really smart and intelligent type of movie that nails some very impressive type of things, especially for the time that it came out in. So guys, thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.